As someone who's watched every South Park episode multiple times, I can tell you there's a moment when you realize not all episodes are created equal. Some make you laugh until your sides hurt, others make you reach for the remote faster than Cartman reaches for KFC. If this discussion on South Park's comedic hierarchy is interesting to you at all, please go ahead and subscribe right now. Today I'm sharing the definitive hierarchy that separates South Park's comedy gold from its absolute disasters. 7 levels that will change how you think about the show's 25-year legacy and help you understand why some episodes are still quoted while others are completely forgotten. So let's start at the bottom and work our way up. Level 1. Unwatchable garbage. The episodes even die-hard fans skip. Level 1 represents the absolute basement. Episodes so catastrophically bad they make you question your life choices and wonder if Parker and Stone we were having some kind of collective breakdown. These are the episodes that even die-hard fans pretend don't exist. We're talking about Pip, the episode where the creators decided to adapt Great Expectations with a completely different animation style. Parker and Stone intentionally broke the mold here, even bringing in Malcolm McDowell as a live-action narrator to signal this was going to be an entirely different experience, a lesson learned from the backlash of Terrence and Phillip in Not Without My Anus. But taking the boys out and drastically changing the format just confirmed that audiences prefer the core characters and the main formula. Parker and Stone themselves called it probably one of the least popular episodes of South Park they ever produced, and fans consistently rank it as the worst episode ever made. One reviewer described it as garbage and stated they genuinely cannot understand what Matt and Trey were thinking making this episode. Then there's A Million Little Fibers, an episode that perfectly demonstrates how structural miscalculations can doom even decent ideas. The creator's own post-mortem reveals the exact problem. They combined a bizarre Oprah anatomy joke with Towelie, and Matt Stone admitted, if we were going to have Oprah's butthole and vagina and the gun and everything, it should have been in a show with the boys, not the towel. This pinpoints their exact structural miscalculation, splitting focus between a Towelie memoir parody and anatomical absurdity that somehow makes even less sense. A History Channel. Thanksgiving throws ancient aliens, wormholes, and Captain Standish into a blender and hits puree. One reviewer called it might be the most forgettable episode in the entire show, and admitted they had absolutely no recollection of this episode in any way. The attempt to blend historical parody with alien conspiracy theories creates confusion rather than comedy. White people renovating houses perfectly embodies everything wrong with South Park's mid-2010s era. The episode attempts to parody smart speakers and the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, showing the satire was attempting relevance but lacked execution depth. Critics described it as like what I would imagine it to be like to have a stroke, because it beats you over the head with its message while simultaneously being unclear about what that message actually is. These episodes share one fatal flaw. They forgot that South Park works best when the satire has a sharp point aimed at a specific target, instead of skewering society with precision. They confuse viewers with convoluted plots and missing punchlines. It's like watching a master chef try to make soup with expired ingredients and a broken stove. These disasters prove that even genius creators can completely whiff when they abandon their core formula. But not every failure crashes this spectacularly. Level 2. Misfire territory. The episodes that tried and failed spectacularly. Moving up from complete disasters, we hit the episodes that had good intentions but crashed on landing like a paper airplane thrown into a ceiling fan. These are the misfires. Episodes where you can see the spark of a brilliant idea buried under execution that just doesn't work. The Return of Chef tried to handle Isaac Hayes' departure while satirizing Scientology, a nearly impossible balancing act that required the finesse of a brain surgeon and the subtlety of a diplomat. Hayes left the show after Parker and Stone criticized Scientology, leading co-creator Matt Stone to point out that Hayes had previously been fine with the show mocking other religions, but drew the line at his own. And remember, they did this while splicing together previous recordings of Hayes' dialogue to voice Chef's brainwashed state after he joined the Super Adventure Club. The execution fails as coherent storytelling because it's trying to serve two masters, delivering a scathing rebuke to Hayes' departure and maintaining narrative consistency. Butterballs tackles bullying with Butters getting tormented by his grandmother while the school creates performative anti-bullying campaigns. The satire of hollow activism is sharp. Stan launches his well-intentioned campaign, urging us to make bullying kill itself, yet completely fails to address the real abuse Butters faces from his grandmother. Critics praised the humor and called the verbal abuse priceless, but the execution gets too dark and disturbing for its own good. The episode ends with Stan having a mental breakdown and dancing naked in San Diego, referencing director Jason Russell's real-world scandal. The problem? The references were too obscure for most viewers, and the tone lurched between brilliant social commentary and genuinely uncomfortable darkness. Free Hat starts as brilliant commentary on directors altering classic films, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg digitally modifying their movies years after release. While the concept of protecting original film negatives had merit, the attempt to escalate the darkness of the physical assaults on the filmmakers became so explicit and vivid later in the episode that critics who typically appreciate dark humor found it disturbing and lost the joke entirely. It took the darkness too far, losing the satire. These episodes demonstrate South Park's ambitious reach, sometimes exceeding its grasp. They tackle important topics, but struggle with tone, pacing, or narrative coherence, like watching a talented chef try to cook 5 different dishes simultaneously and burning half of them. The difference between level 1 and level 2 becomes crystal clear. These episodes have identifiable good ideas buried under poor execution. Level 1 episodes are creative bankruptcies with no redeeming vision. Level 2 episodes are misfires with visible potential that just couldn't stick the landing. They're misfires, not complete creative bankruptcies, which makes them somehow more frustrating to watch. You can see exactly where they should have zigged instead of zagged. But at least these episodes swing for the fences and miss spectacularly, which brings us to something completely different. Level 3, filler episodes, the perfectly mediocre middle ground. Level 3 represents South Park's vast middle ground, episodes that aren't bad enough to hate, but aren't good enough to remember. These are the episodes that exist in comedy purgatory, delivering competent laughs without leaving any lasting impression on your brain. Elementary school, musical parodies. High school, musical competently, but brings nothing new to the table. The jokes hit their marks, like Cartman nearly committing suicide by carbon monoxide, only to discover it doesn't work on hybrid cars. But the episode delivers exactly what you expect it to. No more, no less. Stan gets forced into musical numbers against his will, and Randy enthusiastically embraces his son's newfound theatrical passion. You'll chuckle at the musical theater absurdity, but the episode doesn't dig deeper than surface-level parody. Dead Celebrities has Michael Jackson's ghost possessing Ike during the summer of celebrity deaths. It's fine, just fine. The episode aired during the 2009 celebrity death wave and tackles the media's obsession with famous people dying. The concept works, particularly the joke that these celebrities are trapped in purgatory, which is depicted as an airplane that hasn't taken off yet. But nothing about the episode sticks with you beyond the initial viewing. Season 20's serialized experiment created episodes that all blur together as sort of one long episode, according to rankings of the show. The season tackled internet trolling, nostalgia culture, and political correctness through an ongoing narrative, but the serialized format diluted what makes South Park special. Instead of sharp, standalone satirical strikes, you get a drawn-out story that loses focus and momentum. The individual episodes become forgettable chapters in a larger narrative that wasn't compelling enough to justify the format change. Up the Down Steroid tackles the Special Olympics and performance enhancement, but never transcends its basic premise. Jimmy starts taking steroids to compete better. The other kids get caught up in performance-enhancing drug scandals, and the episode makes its points about competition and cheating. The jokes work, the social commentary lands, but the episode doesn't push beyond its obvious satirical territory. Recent examples like Mexican Joker and Christmas Snow suffer from relying too heavily on established tropes, like Tegrity Farms and Christmas Snow, running a single premise. Cocaine-fueled holidays, for example, until it feels stale, confirming they are classic examples of one-note filler. These episodes hit their satirical targets but lack the sharp wit or memorable moments that define great South Park. They're like ordering a hamburger and getting exactly what you ordered. Nothing wrong with it, but nothing special either. The jokes work, the animation does its job, and you'll chuckle a few times before completely forgetting what you watched. Filler episodes serve a crucial function. They're the reliable middle that makes the classic shine brighter by comparison. They prove South Park's baseline competence but also highlight how rare true comedic genius really is. Without these episodes, you wouldn't fully appreciate just how difficult it is to create truly memorable comedy that actually sticks with you. Level 4. Solid episodes, the reliable laugh generators. Level 4 represents the episodes that consistently deliver laughs and showcase South Park's satirical strengths without reaching for comedic perfection. These are the reliable workhorses that remind you why South Park became a cultural phenomenon in the first place. Sexual Harassment Panda from Season 3 perfectly captures late 90s lawsuit culture with Petey the Sexual Harassment Panda, teaching kids about inappropriate behavior. The episode works because it has a clear target, sharp writing, and escalates logically from innocent school assembly to town-wide litigation chaos. What starts as Cartman suing Stan for sexual harassment spirals into everyone suing everyone else, with Kyle's father Gerald acting as the lawyer for all parties involved. The satire cuts deep by showing how legal systems can be exploited for personal gain while communities tear themselves apart over frivolous lawsuits. But here's the dividing line with the legendary tier: sexual harassment. Panda is funny without being dangerous. Night of the Living Homeless turned zombie movie tropes into biting social commentary about how society treats vulnerable populations. The homeless people behave exactly like zombies, shambling around asking for change instead of brains, while the town responds with typical zombie apocalypse tactics. The episode's genius lies in forcing viewers to confront their own attitudes toward homelessness by literalizing society's fear and dehumanization of the homeless. How to Eat with Your Butt proves that even South Park's crudest premises work when executed with commitment and creativity. The episode follows a milk carton prank where Cartman places a photo of Kenny with a butt drawn on his face, leading to the discovery of the Wisniewski couple, who literally have butts for faces. The dual storylines intersect in ways that shouldn't work, but absolutely do, with the absurd reveal and the couple's struggles creating both shock value and surprising emotional depth that confirms South Park's ability to find humanity even in its most ridiculous premises. Reverse Cowgirl turns toilet seat etiquette into a national security crisis when Clyde's mother dies in a toilet-related accident. The episode escalates from domestic bathroom arguments to TSA-style toilet security measures, creating a ridiculous but internally consistent world where toilet safety becomes a matter of national importance. The absurdity works because the episode commits completely to its premise without winking at the audience. The joke structure is always solid. They establish clear targets, build jokes methodically, and deliver satisfying payoffs. You can drop references from these episodes in casual conversation, and people will immediately know what you're talking about because they execute the basics flawlessly. The pacing feels natural, the characters behave consistently, and the social commentary hits its marks without overstaying its welcome. The critical difference? These episodes have staying power beyond their initial cultural moment. While they may reference specific trends or events, their core satirical insights remain relevant years later because they tap into fundamental human behaviors rather than fleeting cultural moments. But some episodes transcend even this reliable excellence by doing something more ambitious. Level 5. Frontrunners. The episodes that defined South Park's voice. Level 5 represents episodes that didn't just make you laugh, they established what South Park could be as a cultural force that shapes conversations beyond television. We're talking about episodes that became part of America's political vocabulary and proved animated comedy could influence real-world behavior. Douche and Turd aired right before the 2004 election and crystallized the show's cynical take on American politics in ways that still resonate today. When the school holds an election between a giant douche and a turd sandwich as the new mascot, Stan refuses to vote because both options are terrible. The episode captures voter apathy so perfectly that the phrase became shorthand for choosing between two equally unappealing candidates, a concept that feels more relevant with each passing election year, making it feel less like political satire and more like political prophecy. Ginger Kids spawned real-world movements and proved South Park's power to influence actual behavior, for better or worse. Cartman launches an anti-ginger crusade, complete with propaganda about gingers having no souls and being inherently evil. The episode was meant to satirize prejudice and show how easily people fall for discriminatory rhetoric. However, some viewers missed the satire entirely and started actual anti-redhead harassment campaigns. Schools reported increased bullying of red-haired students, forcing the creators to confront their show's unintended real-world consequences. Cartman's anti-ginger crusade revealed the character's capacity for genuine evil, while demonstrating how mob mentality spreads through communities like wildfire. Cartman Land operates as a perfect capitalist fable, wrapped in Kyle's hemorrhoid subplot that somehow works as religious commentary. Cartman inherits money, buys his own amusement park, and refuses to let anyone else enjoy it. Meanwhile, Kyle questions his faith as he watches evil Cartman succeed while good people suffer. The episode explores wealth inequality, religious doubt, and the fundamental unfairness of life through the lens of theme park ownership. The juxtaposition shouldn't work, but it creates one of South Park's most complete satirical statements about American values. Human Centipede skewered Apple's terms of service agreements years before data privacy became a mainstream concern. Kyle gets sewn into a human centipede because he didn't read iTunes terms and conditions, a premise that seemed absurd in 2011 but feels prophetic after years of tech privacy scandals. Cartman is elated to discover that his new revolutionary product enables him to induce someone to defecate into Kyle's mouth. This sheer, grotesque commitment to the joke is what elevates a passing satirical strike into core South Park canon. These episodes showcase South Park at its most prophetic, identifying cultural contradictions before they explode into public consciousness. They function like early warning systems for societal issues, using comedy to highlight contradictions that serious commentary couldn't touch. They're not just comedy episodes, they're cultural artifacts that capture specific moments in American society while remaining relevant years later. Each episode works like a time capsule that reveals how we thought, voted, and behaved during particular cultural moments. Frontrunners prove that great satire doesn't just reflect the world, it helps shape how we understand complex social and political realities through accessible comedic frameworks. But predicting cultural shifts is one thing, creating them is something else entirely. Level 6, Legendary Episodes, the icons that transcended television. Level 6 represents the rarefied air, where episodes become more than entertainment. They become cultural phenomena that spark real-world consequences and force entire societies to examine their deepest contradictions. These episodes function like grenades thrown into America's living room, exploding comfortable assumptions about race, religion, and free speech. With apologies to Jesse Jackson tackled racial slurs head-on when Randy says the N-word on Wheel of Fortune during a nationally televised game show. The episode opens with Randy confidently guessing what he thinks is naggers but saying something far more offensive instead. The episode doesn't just make jokes about racism, it dissects white privilege, performative apologies, and the complexity of racial dialogue in ways that made viewers squirm in their seats. Randy visits Jesse Jackson to apologize, who demands Randy apologize by kissing his buttocks on camera. Token is still mad, saying, "Jesse Jackson is not the emperor of black people." The reconciliation happens only when Stan admits, "I don't get it, and I never will, because I'm not black," providing the honest emotional payoff that moves this beyond mere satire. Trapped in the Closet didn't just mock Scientology, it exposed the religion's beliefs so effectively that Isaac Hayes quit the show, and the episode became a cultural flashpoint. The episode reveals Scientology's creation myth involving alien overlord Xenu and Thetans trapped in human bodies, presenting these beliefs with straight-faced seriousness that made them sound even more absurd. The show's decision to portray Tom Cruise literally hiding in Stan's closet came because their lawyers advised they could not outright call him gay, leading Matt and Trey to employ the genius move of using absurd literal translation to circumvent the restriction. The episode worked like investigative journalism disguised as cartoon comedy, making Scientology's secretive practices accessible to mainstream audiences. The 200th and 201st episodes became so controversial, sparking warnings of violence from extremist sites, that Comedy Central heavily censored the follow-up, 201, bleeping all discussions of Muhammad, and even the final speech. This act of censorship proved the very point Parker and Stone were making about fear and free speech, locking these episodes out of most streaming collections today. These episodes attempted to address South Park's own history with religious satire, while exploring the limits of free speech and comedy. Imagination Land trilogy proved South Park could sustain epic storytelling while maintaining its satirical edge across 3 full episodes. The trilogy explores the power of imagination and belief while featuring every fictional character ever created battling for the fate of human creativity. The scope was ambitious, part war movie, part philosophical meditation on the nature of fiction and reality. These episodes sparked real-world consequences, legal threats, and cultural debates that extended far beyond television ratings. They demonstrate South Park's unique position as both comedy show and cultural lightning rod that can influence public discourse on sensitive topics. Legendary episodes don't just entertain, they force society to confront uncomfortable truths about itself using humor as a delivery mechanism, for ideas too dangerous for serious news coverage. But even these cultural earthquakes pale in comparison to what happens when everything aligns perfectly. Level 7. Untouchable masterpieces, the Mount Rushmore of animated comedy. Level 7 represents South Park's absolute masterworks, episodes so perfect they redefine what animated comedy can achieve. These are the episodes that transcend entertainment and become cultural touchstones, proving that crude animation and fart jokes can deliver storytelling as sophisticated as any prestige drama. Scott Tenorman Must Die revealed Cartman's true sociopathic nature through chili made from Scott's parents in what remains the show's most diabolical twist. When older kid Scott Tenorman tricks Cartman into buying his pubic hair for $10, Cartman plots revenge that escalates from childish pranks to genuine psychological warfare. The episode works on multiple levels: revenge comedy, character development, and genuine horror wrapped in cartoon packaging. Cartman manipulates Scott's parents into getting shot by a farmer, then grinds them into chili and feeds it to Scott at a chili cook-off. The reveal comes with Radiohead watching Scott cry, fulfilling Cartman's promise to make his favorite band witness his humiliation. The episode established Cartman as television's most dangerous child character while maintaining perfect comedic timing throughout its horrific premise. Make Love. Not Warcraft won an Emmy by perfectly capturing gaming culture while telling a heroic underdog story about defeating an overpowered player terrorizing other gamers. The animation seamlessly blended South Park's crude construction paper style with high-fidelity, authentic World of Warcraft gameplay visuals, influencing how other shows would later integrate high-end video game elements into their visual language. The boys transform from normal kids into basement-dwelling gaming addicts, complete with acne and weight gain, while their in-game avatars become legendary heroes. The episode required unprecedented collaboration with Blizzard Entertainment to recreate authentic gameplay footage, creating a hybrid animation style that influenced how other shows would later incorporate video game elements. Good Times with Weapons switches between anime and reality to explore how kids process violence and adult responsibility through the lens of martial arts weapons purchased at a fair. The episode alternates between beautifully animated anime sequences showing the boys as ninja warriors and crude South Park reality where they're just kids with dangerous weapons. When Butters gets a ninja star in his eye, the boys face real consequences for their fantasy violence. The contrast between their heroic self-image and actual incompetence creates commentary about childhood, responsibility, and how media influences behavior. Woodland Critter Christmas starts as innocent holiday fare before revealing Satan, worshipping forest animals in the darkest possible turn. The episode begins like a classic Christmas special with cute woodland creatures asking Stan to help them, but gradually reveals they're trying to birth the Antichrist. The real genius is revealed in the final twist. The entire episode is essentially Cartman telling a story for a class assignment. This narrative device, attempted poorly in the unpopular Pip episode, here is executed with perfect shock humor, immediately establishing this as the correct way to use that structure versus its level 1 failure. These episodes achieve perfect synthesis of high concept, flawless execution, and lasting cultural impact. They're like perfectly calibrated machines where every joke, every plot twist, and every character moment serves the larger satirical purpose. They're not just the best South Park episodes, they're proof that crude animation can deliver storytelling and character development as sophisticated as any prestige drama on television. The secret formula: what separates good from legendary. The best episodes aren't products of luck, they are engineered. You can trace this formula through every level, from level 1's boring misfires to level 7's untouchable brilliance. After analyzing 25 years of South Park, a clear pattern emerges that separates the classics from the disasters. The best episodes combine 3 essential elements: a sharp satirical target, perfect timing, and the willingness to cross lines others won't. Think of it like a 3-legged stool. Remove any element, and the whole thing collapses into mediocrity or worse. Level 4. Episodes hit their targets but play it safe. They're funny without being dangerous. Sexual harassment. Panda mocks lawsuit culture effectively, but doesn't threaten anyone's worldview or career. You laugh, you get the point, you move on with your life unchanged. Level 6 and 7 episodes don't just make jokes, they make statements that force real-world consequences. Trapped in the Closet didn't just parody Scientology, it cost the show one of its main voice actors and sparked legal threats that continue today. With Apologies to Jesse Jackson didn't just address racial language, It forced viewers to examine their own relationship with offensive speech in ways that made dinner conversations uncomfortable across America. The hierarchy reveals South Park's evolution from crude animation experiment to cultural institution that shapes public discourse. What started as toilet humor gradually developed into sophisticated social commentary that politicians, journalists, and academics take seriously. Episodes become legendary when they balance offense with insight, making you laugh while making you think about uncomfortable truths. The worst episodes offend without purpose, like a million little fibers stretching weak jokes until they break. The best episodes use offense as a scalpel to cut through social hypocrisy and reveal deeper contradictions in human behavior. The crude animation style that seemed like a limitation became a strength, allowing focus on writing and voice acting rather than visual spectacle. While other shows spent budgets on flashy animation, South Park invested in sharp dialogue and satirical precision. The simple animation actually helps controversial content slip past audiences' defenses. It's harder to get offended by construction paper cutouts than realistic characters. Parker and Stone's anger at society's hypocrisies fuels their best work. The madder they get, the funnier the results. You can track their emotional investment through episode quality. When they care deeply about exposing social contradictions, they create masterpieces. When they're going through the motions, you get filler. The ultimate lesson. Great satirical comedy requires rage, translated into courage, timing, and genuine insight into human contradictions. Without that clear satirical purpose, offense is meaningless noise. But with perfect execution, offensive comedy becomes the most powerful form of social commentary, transcending from forgettable filler to certified legend. This 7-level system reveals exactly how two creators transformed crude animation into a cultural force that continues shaping how America thinks about its deepest contradictions. Understanding this hierarchy changes how you watch every episode. The 7 levels prove that South Park's genius lies not in being offensive for its own sake, but in using offense as a scalpel to force us to confront reality. The unwatchable garbage offends without purpose. The masterpieces offend with surgical precision. Whether you're watching unwatchable garbage or untouchable masterpieces, you're witnessing 25 years of American culture filtered through two creators' uncompromising vision. Parker and Stone built a hierarchy where the most controversial episodes often deliver the sharpest social commentary. Now that you hold the critical tools to articulate the difference between a funny misfire and a legendary masterpiece, go forth and refine your expertise. And if you enjoyed this lecture and analysis, please give the video a like and, if you haven't already, subscribe for more deep dives into the animated series that refuses to grow up. Class dismissed.